Found my wife 4 months pregnant under a blanket with her coworker on our couch, and now I secretly plan a paternity test. My wife, 38F, and I, 39 male, have been together for 12 years. I don't know how to describe it other than calling it the perfect relationship. I think in 12 years we've only ever gotten to the point of really raising our voices at one another maybe 2 or 3 times. We do everything together but always have never had issues allowing each other to lead our own lives and follow our own interests. We bought a house where we wanted. We both have good high-paying jobs that have great work-life balance. Basically it's been everything short of perfect. We've been trying for 2 years to get pregnant and it hadn't been happening. We were just about to start the fertility stuff when I came home from a work trip, and guess what, she's pregnant. I had this weird instant thought of, wait, I thought we didn't try during the week last month because of the fertility testing. But I couldn't remember exactly because, to be honest, we were busy at it. So I just assumed I misremembered. Now, I travel around the country pretty regularly for work. Other than COVID, I've been on the road as much as 40 weeks a year sometimes. Since COVID it's been less but still more than a week a month. Over the last 4 to 5 years my wife has gotten very friendly with a guy she works with, let's call him Matt. Matt is slightly younger, I think 34 or so. I know him, he's married, I know his wife. They've worked together for I think 7 years or so. He's always been around, him and I have been friendly. Have I ever thought something was happening? No, but I've always thought. You'd be a fool to not think there's even a 1% chance your spouse would go outside the relationship. Maybe I'm naive, but I've always seen it as a safeguard to not take my wife or any other partner in the past for granted. She's never given me a reason to think she'd do that. But anything is possible. So about a month ago I'm out of state for work and she's at home. I ask her what she's doing earlier in the day and she says Matt is coming by for dinner. Not out of the ordinary, Matt comes by from time to time. Sometimes with his wife, sometimes without, sometimes when I'm not there. I don't think much of it. We have a security system which includes cameras both inside and outside of the house which we installed after an unrelated incident a few years ago. They record and are live accessible by both her and I. I often use those cameras to check on the dog when I or both of us are away, as the rest of the system is monitored by a company in case of an alarm going off. She knows I check those cameras, there's a system installed where I can talk through them. I'll mess with my wife and she will with me on them if either of us are out of town. She travels for work as well, but far less than I do. Point is, it's known that I check them often when I'm not at home. So I turn on the camera and I see my 4 months pregnant wife, lying on the floor, on her side with Matt sitting, straddling her legs and using a foam roller to massage her hips. So I'm like, okay. What the fuck is this? I start rewinding through the footage and they are eating and talking normally, but then they get on the couch and get under the same blanket. Now, they are feet to feet, but that couch isn't that big. Then they move to the floor and that's when I logged in. Anyway, I text her, I'm still watching the cameras, they both look like deer in headlights, and he very quickly leaves. We get into an argument. She isn't mad at me accusing her, but she's adamant that nothing has or ever would happen, and that what I saw was innocent, and she was complaining about being in pain from the pregnancy. Which I know is true, she's already having some issues with back pain etc. The biggest point of that discussion was I asked if I were there would you two have been comfortable doing any of that in front of me, and she reluctantly admitted, no, probably not. I told her I didn't want to talk after that and we'd talk when I got home 3 days later. That's when it hit me. What if my weird gut moment feeling about her telling me she was finally pregnant was this? What if my 1% happened and this is not my child we are having? Now, it eats away at my while I'm at a hotel alone 1,000 miles away for 3 days. I reconcile with myself that I think it's less likely than more likely that something between them has happened. But basically my 1% just jumped to 10%, 20% maybe? I get home and she's on eggshells and doesn't mention it. I kinda wait to see what she's going to do. 2 days later she finally brings it up and breaks down. Swears nothing has happened, she would never. Doesn't do anything over the top to try and prove anything. Which I took as a good sign. But anyway, we talk out the issue and everything to a point of at least moving forward for now. I'm still coping and dealing with it, figuring out how to retrust after all this time. I'm getting more and more understanding of the fact that they are friends, they've been friends for so long, maybe he has intentions. But I don't see her having any, and I've never really picked up on it, and I've spent time around both of them together many times, and never caught anything. So the thing that is destroying me right now is, if I'm wrong and something did happen, while I can figure out how to deal with that, what if that child isn't mine? In the argument and few long conversations we've had about the situation since, I've never brought that up, and she's not mentioned it. Mostly because I don't want to make the situation worse and crush her if in fact she's telling the truth, which I mostly believe. The only thing I can think to do at this point is to wait until the baby is born and immediately order a paternity test in secret. Should I do that? Should I tell her and have it dealt with now? If you're a woman in her shoes and you're telling the truth, would that destroy you, or your view of me? If you're lying, what would you do if I asked? I don't want to ask a super vague question, but what do I do? Update 1. 1. Stop DMing me about this, thanks. 2. Some have made some good points about addressing it now rather than later, and that's something that I'm considering more than I was before, thank you. 3 to those focused only on my relationship. I get it, but that's not what I'm focused on. We've been talking about it a lot. My wife and I are pretty open people with each other. I'm not saying I'm convinced nothing happened, but I'm more focused on paternity right now. 4 if I need to track, spy on, Life 360, my wife. Then this relationship is over already. That's not the relationship we have and not one that I ever want, and in my opinion not one anyone should ever have. We are working on rebuilding trust. As I said in this long-winded post, my default of 1% possibility went up to 10% or so. Trust me, I'm taking my relationship seriously, but to those I've said this to already. If the kid isn't mine, then there's no longer any conversation to have. 5 I've already had this discussion with my lawyer. I don't live in a state where the birth certificate stuff will be an issue. If I have paperwork that this child isn't mine, then divorce isn't going to be much of an issue. Both of us are in an independent financial situation where it won't matter much regardless. Update 2. So she was out of state on a business trip until late last night. It's Friday, so she worked from home in our kitchen. So I asked to talk and brought it up and asked for a test. She immediately said yes and said there's zero doubt and nothing that she'd even have a second to worry about. But she has no problem doing it now. The only caveat I left it with is, if it's invasive at all per our doctors, then I'm okay waiting until it's low risk. I'm not a doctor, no clue what they'd have to do it now, so not sure when we are. But she's aware and we are getting one. It was a decent and longer conversation. We are currently sitting together getting lunch. She's got no clue I did this on Reddit. Hence the new account, because she is on here somewhere. Thank you everyone for your help and opinions. A bunch of you made me realize that we are already really open about everything, and if nothing happened then she wouldn't worry about getting one. I was more worried about her health and adding some insane level of stress if it was an issue, as she's an at-risk pregnancy and it took so long for us to get pregnant. Update 3. Hi folks. So I haven't been touching this account at all, as I was mostly bombarded by people telling me I'm an AI, wishing my wife a miscarriage, claiming she's going to get a secret abortion to save herself. Or that I'm a clown for not keeping it real and destroying someone else's marriage over speculation only. I'm amazed that people are still following this and invested in it after all this time. Here's where we are at. Yes, my wife is still very much pregnant. She's in the hard to pick things up off the floor stage. She's due in 8 weeks. Holy shit, 6 weeks actually, just looked at the calendar. We are getting weekly ultrasounds at this point. He's already about 5 pounds and has a big ol' head. Her and I had some very long direct conversations about everything. She is adamant that nothing has ever happened and nothing ever would. For a while she was pretty upset with herself for causing this and causing my feelings of doubt. I've done my best to remedy that, as I've got to keep stress off her as much as possible right now. But it will for sure be revisited after the birth. As I've been saying the entire time, I'm really only worried about the child and the birth going well, etc. Well, mostly, maybe not only. The only thing we still really disagree on is I thought he was getting too close because he had developed feelings or was getting attention that he wasn't getting elsewhere, maybe, etc. She doesn't see it that way but has also said it's possible, but if so, she was blind to it. I told her I wanted a paternity test and she immediately agreed to it and said no problem at all. My only stipulation was that it couldn't be medically risky or stress-inducing at all, as she's a high-risk pregnancy. We both spoke to her doctors about it and they basically told us that our only option was to go to the courthouse because they wouldn't do one without the law involved. Which we both thought was ridiculous. Her doctor was a bit thrown off by it, so I didn't press very hard. It was honestly her pretty much demanding it. I knew there were other options. I looked into those other options and ultimately decided to wait until the birth, and I have a lab already set up to do it, ready to go. I'm 95% sure it's unnecessary, but I'm still getting one for my peace of mind and mostly so that nothing will come between me and my child. For those of you that have left me messages of support that I didn't get back to, thank you. I'm going to spend some time going through them tonight before I run off again. For those of you who've left messages that think I should be acting like a 17-year-old high school student and either getting violent, purposely cheating on my wife to prove a point, or other childish trash, thanks for the entertainment at least. Stop watching TLC and TikTok. That dumbass drama ain't the way, kiddos. And to the one person who suggested I cause an accident with my wife, I hope you end up behind bars someday. It's really likely I'm not going to come back here after tonight until after I get the results from the lab. So if you're really still interested in the results, come back in 1.5 to 2 months. I've been told the results take about 48 hours once submitted. I'll give you your Maury moment then. Just as a preempt, I'm going to post something I responded to someone else on the last post just a minute ago, but I likely won't check this account until after the birth. After this, comment number 1. People seem to be reading into the reasons I thought all this was more than what I said. I've seen dude, they were in bed together. You caught them or they were cuddling under a blanket. Totally get how the telephone game works. But I never said any of that. So I'll clarify, I guess. Here's exactly what I saw. They were on the sectional couch in my living room at either ends under the same large blanket, feet to feet. The massage. She was laying on the floor in her side, he was sitting by her feet and rolling one of those big foam rollers on her back and side, which is something I do all the time because she's been complaining about back and outer hip pain. Still enough for me to raise a concern with her. But people seem to be reading into that as they were basically dry humping and thought you couldn't see. Comment number 2, I'm being told that I'm being oblivious and ignoring the obvious. And letting her and him off the hook. This is a direct comment I left someone giving my thoughts on that. I think they said something like, this is what guys who choose to have their head in the sand say. My response: yeah, I'm pretty well aware of that. I've also stated many times that my wife is a high at risk pregnancy, so I've decided to try and not explode things until I know something for a fact and risk what would potentially be the only opportunity I have to have a child at my age. If it turns out I'm wrong and that happens because I blew all this up over nothing, I don't know how I could live with myself. And my marriage likely wouldn't survive that anyway. So I don't see that as a winning option. If I deal with it calmly and like an adult, and if I'm wrong, then great, we can move on. And if I'm right, then it can still be dealt with accordingly. wth facts and not speculation. If the child is mine, and the birth goes well, then we have a healthy child and I can deal with the remainder of any damage she has or hasn't done without risking potentially the only child I'm going to have. Trust me. I'm not ignoring it, I'm choosing to support my wife to get through the pregnancy first. Then I'll deal with the rest of it. It's probably been the hardest thing I've ever done emotionally. But here we are. I know I'm a sarcastic sob in some of these comments, but honestly, thank you for everyone's concern, and I have gotten some good advice from people. Mostly this has been a bit cathartic to write all this down as. Most of my friends are toxic dudes who are more interested in fighting about golf or some other pointless shit. Love em. But I don't really have anyone other than her to talk to about any of this. So honestly, thank you. Now on to second story. Father left my mother for his depressed mistress. My aunt mocked her to her face, I laughed, and now my dad's mad at me. 2 years ago my father left my mother to go with his mistress, whom I will call Anna, common name. My mother never had any idea about the infidelity. Anna knew that my father was married. She even went to the house with him to take his things. One day he simply told my mother that he is no longer in love with her and wants to be happy with Anna. I was there when everything happened. Anna was depressed. She has many scars on her legs and arms. I don't go to my father's house. It makes me uncomfortable to be around them for obvious reasons. Anna is overly nice and it's really uncomfortable. A few days ago it was my grandfather's birthday and the whole family was together, including Anna. I have an aunt who suffers from depression and other more heavy things like schizophrenia. She has tried to hurt herself many times. At one point in the night there were only my father, my aunt, Anna, another aunt and I in the living room. For some reason my aunt and Anna were talking about some serious things, and at one point Anna began to say that depression made her do many things trying to feel fulfilled, that she could only overcome depression when she met my father and he saved her, that meeting him was the key to overcome her depression, and now she's finally happy thanks to him. I know about that because Anna often tried to bond with me by telling me how much she suffered in her life and how my father saved her. She has always justified herself that she was depressed and was in a hard place in her life before my father saved her. It always makes me feel uncomfortable and I don't feel empathy for her no matter how sweet she is. Talking about how many times you try to kill yourself in front of my 8-year-old sister, it's not something normal. Anna has always tried to paint her relationship with my father as a fairy tale that began in a different way, but that she doesn't regret anything because her world is perfect now. At that moment my aunt said something like, I tried to save myself by going to a psychologist, not by jumping on the dick of a married man, and then she began to say that depression made her want to jump off a bridge but not ruin a family. I just laughed. It was funny. My aunt may have her mind elsewhere all day, but it was crazy to see her make such a sly comment. But when my father was taking me home Anna was crying and he scolded me for laughing at what my aunt said, saying that no one knows everything that Anna suffered. I know, she always talks about that. I didn't apologize, but now I think, was I really wrong to laugh? From my point of view, my aunt was right. Update 1. Hello, some things happened over the weekend. My aunt came home, I live with my mother, and told my mom what happened. My mother hates my dad for obvious reasons, but still she's been really nice to him and tried to keep us out of all those problems they have. My mother is honestly a saint. My sister is an 8-year-old girl and she really hates Anna. Anna once tried to get along with my sister and told her about the time she wanted to commit suicide and how my dad saved her. After that my sister came home asking my mother if she had ever thought about committing suicide. That's not a question an 8-year-old girl should ask, and my sister even asked me questions about suicide after that. I don't really know what else exactly Anna said to her, but it definitely affected her as a little girl. It's not even something you should talk about with a girl of that age. My mother was furious, and since that day she forbids my father to have my younger sister near Anna as she considers her a dangerous and unstable person around children. Since that day things have been really tense between my father and my mother. My little sister doesn't want to visit our father, so she is fine with this. My aunt told my mother that Anna talked about it again, but this time in front of me. Apparently my father and Anna were totally forbidden to talk about these things in front of me too. I'm not a little kid, but apparently that was the arrangement my mother made with my father when she set boundaries for them. My aunt told her what happened that day, and I confessed to my mother that Anna and my father talk a lot about those suicide attempts in front of me, which is something I should have talked about before, but at that moment I didn't want problems and decided to just ignore them. I told my mom that for that reason I am not going to my father's house anymore, and my mother got very upset with him. The next day she went to talk to my father. I don't know what they talked about. She just came back saying that Anna can't get close to us anymore. She told me that she can't forbid me from being near my father and that's my decision, but Anna is extremely forbidden to set foot in the same place where I and my sister are. My paternal grandparents agreed and my aunts too. They knew about the situation with my younger sister. I haven't spoken to my father, but my cousin told me that my father argued with my grandfather. He often says that Anna is a good person and we don't understand the pain she suffered, so I guess he's upset with all of us now for our great lack of empathy, as he always says. I don't know, at least now I won't see them for a while. Update 2. Hi, I wasn't planning to make another update but we've had a lot of problems with Anna, too many, and I think now even my father has realized that she's crazy. I have stopped going to see my father and my father's parents stopped allowing him to go with Anna to their house since I am there a lot and my mother does not allow her to come near me or my sister. Anna began to have the strange behavior of starting to send me texts. First she apologized to me but insisted that my father misses me and my sister. I replied to her that my mother does not allow us to talk to her and she said that she is my father's partner so we have to get used to her being around. She started to talk badly about my mother, skeptical, saying that I'm too young to realize it but my mother is manipulating us and that's wrong because she's not allowing us to be a family. I'm young but I'm not dumb. I didn't answer her again and showed the messages to my mother who spoke to my father again. My father knew nothing about this and apparently had an argument with Anna about this since now my mother is planning to take away his last name from our name to end with this shit show and protect us. I don't understand too much about this, but in my country you can go to court and take out your father's surname, making him have no right over you anymore. I honestly believe that neither my sister nor I would have any problem with this, but I think my mother just said that to scare him. This is something I heard from my aunt and I don't know how much of this is real, but my father has been staying at my grandparents' house. One of those nights Anna went to knock on the door looking for him just to argue. She and my father began to argue. Anna yelled at my dad that he couldn't leave her like that, but nothing else happened because my grandfather kicked her out. My aunt also told me that my father told her that Anna sends him messages like, if you leave me I will kill myself, you can't leave me, so my father is afraid of leaving her and afraid of her. Less than 2 days ago I found out that my father had to leave work quickly because she sent him goodbye messages. Nothing happened to her, she just cut her arms as always. My aunt said that this is something that Anna has always done. Even when the affair started she sent him messages saying that she was about to commit suicide so that my father would go to her. This is something that Anna also told me but in a more romantic way. It always scared me. I have no contact with my father and I avoid him when he's on grandpa's house, but as far as my aunt has told me, he doesn't know what to do since he misses us but is afraid to leave her and that she will kill herself. I feel bad for thinking this but I'm really relieved to be hearing all this from afar. I'm so thankful that my mom forbade us to see her before all this happens and honestly this is his karma, so I'm not going to get into this. Anna took her own life when my father went to get some of his things with grandpa and was scared that she could hit or do something to him. That's all I know, but she killed herself while they were loading some of my father's stuff into the car. I'm very shocked. I wanted to think what everyone told me, that she wasn't going to do it. I don't want to talk to my father at all. Is this wrong? Want my mother to take us away from him? I do not know. I go to the psychologist and my sister too, but neither of us want to talk to my dad even now. I don't want that drama in my life. My psychologist says it's normal and I shouldn't talk with him if I don't want to. My sister hates him. I don't feel bad for Anna either and that makes me feel worse. The last thing I heard about her before this was that the police didn't do anything because they never do anything and she refused to continue her psychological treatment because according to my aunt, they would tell her that she should be hospitalized, and that happened to my aunt in the past too. I didn't know that. I remember my father telling her about her appointments with the psychologist and even the psychiatrist sometimes because of the medications and the start of that relationship, but she would refuse and say she was fine. She wasn't young or naive, she was 34, almost my parents' age. I even think she had more control in the relationship than my father. She was a grown woman and I can admit that this last days I was nervous about her BC of all the things she was doing. I don't feel bad about her death. I even feel very relieved that she is dead, and it is something that my aunts have also told me. Everyone feels like that about her. They and my psychologist say that it is normal to feel that way, but anyway I prefer to think that I am a better person than her and my father, so I'm not going to be happy for it but respectful. It's sad to think that we're all relieved when someone died. She wasn't a good person at all. My father is not a good person either and I know it. He is not an innocent. He did many bad things to my mother during the whole divorce process. He left us until it occurred to him to want to play family with that woman, and even so my mother had always encouraged us to talk to him. They both did a lot of things to my mother during the divorce process, but now I just want my mother to continue to forbid my father from seeing us until we want to see him. Anna scared me.